Okay, we move forward now. Listening to songs and music.
Satan has employed this evil to spoil people's hearts and reduce and seduce innumerable scholars and mystics, let alone the ordinary individuals. So much that some falsely claim unity with Allah during listening to songs and music. They even wrongly claim their joy to be related to ecstasy of the hereafter. Trying to know the truth, consider the first century of Islam. Has the Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, or any of his companions, may Allah be pleased with them, done such a thing? Then consider lives of jurists and the successors, such as Malik, Abu Hanifah, Ash-Shafi, and Ahmad. May Allah be pleased with them. They all have condemned music. Malik stated that if man buys a slave girl and finds out that she is a singer, he should give her back. Questioned about singing, he replied, "It is done by the obscene persons." Imam Ahmad was asked about a man who died leaving a son and a slave girl. The boy needed to sell the girl. He viewed that she should be sold as a naive and an artless girl, telling him that as a singer, she costs about 30,000, but as naive, she costs 20,000. He replied, "She will not be sold as a naive. All jurists have agreed to disclaim singing." Abu At-Taib At-Tabari has also compiled a book where he strongly condemns singing. Some mistaken and misled persons have falsely presumed its permissibility. Hearing an itinerant, Imam Ahmad said, "It is not bad." He accredited poetry, which encouraged good manners, wisdom, noble qualities, and pious traits, as long as no instruments, clapping or dancing are there. In that way, Aisha reports, may Allah be pleased with her, that two girls were chanting beside her the poems of Bu'ath, a story about the war between the two tribes of the Khazraj and the Aus before Islam, come under this category. It is quite known that early Muslims did not have things such as mandolin, lute, and cymbals that agitate latent lusts in a way misleading ignorant persons due to their false joy and ecstasy. They do not claim that it's some sort of lawful amusement, but rather consider it some kind of spiritual attachment, calling it ecstasy. In fact, this practice is totally detached from that of early Muslims. It is overt distraction. True ecstasy comes through reciting the Quran and contemplating over it. It is when one's heart moves due to fear of punishment and longing for reward. The scope of ecstasy is not so narrow that we would resort to singers. Truly, such songs may arouse ecstasy a little bit, but most of them instigate carnal lusts. Therefore, desiring to derive therefrom benefit for the hereafter is similar to gazing at a beardless person to meditate over Allah's creation. Let me read this again. I can't understand. Hereafter is similar to gazing at a beardless person to meditate over Allah's creation. But this is untrue, since his lust would preoccupy his thinking. He should rather follow the verse which reads, "Do they not look at the sky above them? How we have made it and adorn it, and there are no flaws in it." Qaf 6. Furthermore, presuming that it does not affect oneself or agitate his latent desires in a sheer presence, is a sheer pretense. Sorry. Finish. Thank you.
Jazakillah khaira. Thank you very much. The chapters regarding songs and music, as this is very important to understand Imam Ghazali's position, because many people, they falsely attribute Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah that he allows the music, he allows the songs. But you can here we can clearly see his position regarding the issue. He says, actually, I told you before the difference between the true Sufism and the, we can say, the false Sufis. There are the Sufism is, as I said, it is one of the established discipline of knowledge in Islam, based on the Quran and Sunnah. But unfortunately, in Islamic world, there are many traditions which are attributed to Sufism now, but it has nothing to do with the Islam. The theology or the basic teachings, they are totally based on the Greek mythology, the Hindu mythology, and other different traditions of the world, which has nothing to do with the Islam. And the shirk, kufr, and bid'ah, many things are done under the cover of Sufism. I have made a distinction in this before between the two, that we cannot give a flat ruling whether Sufism is good or bad. We cannot give a flat ruling. Rather, we have to see the things. Like if a person tells us, what is your opinion about the Muslims? Are they good or bad? We cannot give the flat ruling, the Muslims are good or they are bad. We can say some Muslims are good, some Muslims are bad. Likewise, some Sufis are good, some Sufis are bad. As far as the good Sufis are concerned, as I said before, that their main criterion is Quran and Sunnah. They will never overstep the Quran and Sunnah. They try their top level best to maintain the scales of Quran and Sunnah. On the other hand, the misled Sufis, they beside different innovations, different sorts of bid'ah in their ways of this Sufism, they introduce the music as one of the domains. And they think when they listen to the music, they are very close to God, in a state of ecstasy. And Shaitan has misled them. Satan has employed this evil to spoil people's heart and seduce innumerable scholars and mystics. Imam Ghazali mentions this thing, that many of people, they are misled by this thing, let alone the ordinary individuals. So sometimes you will find the scholars, the Sufis, they do listen to the music. But Imam Al-Ghazali says, rahimahullah, so much that some falsely claim unity with Allah during listening to songs and music. I have myself met many of people. They say when we listen to the music, they are very close to God. They are in a state of ecstasy, what they call themselves. They even wrongly claim their joy to be related to the ecstasy of the hereafter. And even I came across with the people who say that when they listen to this music, they are close to the arsh. I don't know how Shaitan takes them to different places and makes them to think that they are close to the arsh. No nearness of Allah, closeness of Allah can be achieved by violating the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This we must remember once for all, that no closeness of Allah, nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be achieved through violating the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. That's deadly impossible. The only way to achieve the oneness of Allah, the closeness of Allah, the nearness to Allah, our communion with our God, is only possible when we offer our strict adherence to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. And we have discussed in our previous sessions at length regarding the hukm of the music and hukm of the musical instruments. We discussed that while discussing about commanding the good and forbidding the wrong. So what is the ruling of the instruments? So we discussed that at length. And here the issue is whether this listening to songs and music is allowed or not. It is totally forbidden. And this won't help a person to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, this will make a person to get away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, we find that some scholars, some prominent scholars, they allowed the playing of music. Now, as far as the general ruling is concerned, that's what Imam Al-Ghazali says. But we need to understand the context of those scholars. When they allowed the music, what was the context of that? For example, there was one of the famous Sufi saint, Sufi scholar, Mu'inuddin Chishti rahimahullah. He's even founder of one of the Sufi order that is known as Chishti. They are in India. He's in India. You know the Taj Mahal, the world famous structure, Taj Mahal, is in the same region, the same area. His name was Mu'inuddin Chishti rahimahullah. He was very pious. And it is because of Mu'ainuddin Chishti rahimahullah, the lamp of Islam was alight in the Indian subcontinent. That 90,000 people embraced Islam through Mu'ainuddin Chishti rahimahullah. And actually that time, the region he was in, the people, they were all Hindus. And Hinduism is based on the music. Music is a part of the ibadah in the Hinduism. That's why you see those people who are close to the Hindus and they are influenced by them, they find a lot of love for the music. Because music is considered to be a way of devotion to God, according to them. So he was preaching the Islam among these people who were born while the music was played. While music was played, they were born. So the music was just taken to their hearts. The love of music was deep rooted into their hearts. So what Mu'ainuddin Chishti rahimahullah did, he used we can say it now, music therapy. He used the same tool to get them close to the Islam. And he did it, he effectively did it. But his action cannot justify that it is allowed for all the people. What he did, firstly, they were singing these songs for these different gods and goddesses and different idols, statues. So what he did, he said, though he did not play himself, but those who came too close to him slowly through his da'wah, so he began to tell them, okay, you sing the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he gave a shift. So his main objective was a main shift from praising the false gods to the praise of one God, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are simple exceptions. And even if they are exceptions, that cannot be the law. That cannot be taken as we can say, as an evidence. You can see that Sheikh did it, so it is allowed. No, not at all. So it can be said that for that Sheikh, he thought that it can be a tool to bring people close to the Islam. To that extent, we can say he did this. And later on, when they learned the Islam fully, they gave it up. But to bring them closer to the Islam, he used it as a tool. And later on, when they were educated, then they gave it up. So we cannot make this action as a law. So general ruling is what Imam Al-Ghazali says, rahimahullah. That's why he says that some scholars are mystics. So they used this, but not for this reason that what is forbidden by the Sharia, they thought it is lawful. That was not the question. The issue was that they used such things to bring them closer to Islam. Another example I gave you, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has commanded that when a Muslim, when a person passes away, his grave must be simple. There should be no structure on the grave. It's not allowed. Any structure on the grave is not allowed. Like we have the different structures on the grave, especially the concrete structure. In Kashmir, there's a tradition that we have the huge stones, and they are carved out stones. They are designed stones. When a person passes away, and that's also costly. When a person passes away, the stone, that designed stone, and which the name of the deceased is inscribed on it, the date of death, his name, his parentage is written on this. It's a huge stone and heavy stone, but beautifully designed. So it is placed upon the grave of a person. Though Prophet forbid, now the question here is, this is bid'ah. As many people they say it is bid'ah. Actually, we need to see the context. When the da'i, the second da'i, that was Mir Sayyid Ali Hamadani, he came from Iran, Hamadan, to Kashmir to preach the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those who embraced Islam, one of the group, what they were doing, they were the idol gravers, statue makers. They would make the statues out of the stones. However, when they became Muslim, they were rendered jobless. They could not do anything. Then Mir Sayyid Ali Hamadani rahimahullah, he thought that if they were not knowing any other skill, they were best, their skill was, they had the expertise in just making the things out of the stone, designing the stones and making the idols and these statues, which people later on worshipped. Now they embraced Islam. Now they are rendered jobless because no more they can make the statues. They cannot make the idols. Mir Sedili Hamadani Rahimahullah, what he told them, you make the beautiful stones, you beautiful design, and you sell them. If any Muslim dies, you put this upon his grave. So this was a shift actually, taking them from all the actions, activities of the kufr to the Islam. However, later on, it had to be stopped. But unfortunately, it became the part of the culture. Now, alhamdulillah, things are getting better. Now people are getting aware about the teachings of Islam. But we cannot say at that time what he did, it was totally wrong, it was bid'ah. We need to understand his context. In what context he allowed this? For whom he allowed this? Later on, it was the responsibility of the subsequent people to refine, to fix the problems. So if there is any such happening in any part of the world, that cannot be taken as a justification. That cannot be considered to be the law. The law is only what Allah said, what our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did. That's the only law. And here Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah makes it clear. So this is he makes this position altogether clear, that those people who think that by adopting this path of singing and music, they get the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is just a shaitan who is playing with them. To get the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to get nearness to him, is only possible when a person strictly adheres to the commandments of Allah and his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Imam Ghazali rahimahullah seems to be very clear, but unfortunately, many people, they ascribe to Imam Al-Ghazali that he allows this music. So we need to understand here a difference between the music and the sima. Ghina and sima, these are two different things. Ghina and sima. Ghina, what is ghina and what is sima? So I define them and I explain them, I think, in our next session. So ghina is any song coupled with the music, and sima is any poetry without the music. So in sima, you compose a poem, and even you make others to listen to this poem, but with no music. And then there is ghina. Ghina is that you compose a poem and then you sing a poem along with the music. That is known as ghina. In Islam, sima is allowed as long as there is no any content which is contradictory to the Quran and Sunnah. So we can say poetry is allowed as long as it is not contrary to the Quran and Sunnah. And ghina, even if it is a good poem but coupled with the music, it's not allowed. Because music in Islam is clearly mentioned, it's not allowed. All the scholars agree on this, that music is not allowed in Islam. So even if a person sings the nasheed, a good song, but with music, it's not allowed in Islam. So Imam Ghazali's position is altogether clear. There's no ambiguity about it. So all the attributions which are made to him are false. Because we can see the direct text. He clearly says that is a way of shaitan. Those who stick to it, they stick to the path of shaitan. And even if scholars do it, it is not justified at all. So we need to understand the difference between the ghina and the sima. Trying to know the truth, consider the first century Islam. This is the best thing Imam Al-Ghazali teaches here, that whenever we come across with any situation or with any issue about which we are not sure about, we feel that what is the ruling, is it good or bad? There's a well saying in English. It says that in the case of differences, go to the past. So Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah is all clear, his position is all clear that music is not allowed in Islam. And one of the important thing which he says that whenever we see anything and we want to know its ruling, and we are not in a position to find out whether this is allowed or not, this is good or bad, this is lawful or unlawful. So Imam Al-Ghazali rahimahullah gives a beautiful criterion for us. He says that you must see what was a prophetic approach. In an, in an event of differences, go to the past. If you're not in a position to find out what is position, see what Prophet did, what Sahaba did, Ridwanullah ta'ala alayhim ajma'in. Consider the first century of Islam as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any of his companions, Ridwanullah ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, done such a thing. Then consider lives of jurists and the successors such as Malik, Abu Hanifa, Ash-Shafi'i, Ahmad, rahimahumullah ajma'in. They all have condemned music. Malik stated that if a man buys a slave girl and finds out that she is a singer, he should give her back. Questioned about singing, he replied, "It is done by the obscene persons." So it is not. There's not a single scholar among the Ummah who talked about the permissibility of the music. Imam Ahmad was asked about a man who died leaving a son and a slave girl. The boy needed to sell the girl. He vowed that she should be sold as a naive and an artless girl, telling him that as a singer she costs about 30,000. So with this skill of singing, she would be more costlier than without this skill. And Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he clearly replied that she will not be sold, but as a naive. Means he should not teach her anything which is forbidden by the Sharia. And all jurists have agreed to disclaim singing. All jurists means there is unanimity, there's consensus of scholars regarding the issues that music is not allowed in Islam. There are many reasons for this. Actually, one of the main reason is that uh, it arouses the lustful feelings in a person. Many people, they claim that they get close to God. It's all a false claim. The main objective of music is entertainment, entertaining the soul. Especially when music is it's played, then it arouses the bad feelings in a person. Abu At-Tayyib At-Tabari rahimahullah has also compiled a book where he strongly condemns singing. And however, some mistaken and misled person have falsely presumed its permissibility. Hearing an itinerant, Imam Ahmad said it is not bad. He accredited poetry, which encourage good manners, wisdom, noble qualities, and pious traits, as long as is no instrument clapping or dancing are there. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, he said, if a person is saying poetry, as I said, technically it is also known as sima. Sima is when you compose a poem in which there are it encourage good manners, wisdom, noble qualities, and pious traits. So that there's no harm in it, and even provided there's no clapping instruments or dancing. However, if the poem is not containing all these things like the good manners, wisdom, noble qualities, or pious traits, so is it allowed? Then we have to see the content. If the content is just, it's not having anything which is contradictory to the Quran and Sunnah, and it is, we can say it is mubah. That time the poetry becomes mubah. Means a person is just praising this beauty of this world, like Wordsworth's poems, which talk about the beauty of this universe. There's no problem in it. However, if any content is there which try to just trigger the obscene sentiments in a person, at that very moment it is not allowed. It's totally disallowed. uh, One of the thing as well, the nomads, they used to just move from one place to another place. There was no any permanent settlement for them. For example, especially in those regions where there are 4 seasons. During the winters, they would prefer to go to such places which were hot. So they used to move from one place to other place. And for these nomads, they were also having the traditions. Even now, if you see almost in many countries, this nomadism still exists, though not the larger scale it used to be before, at a smaller scale, but the nomads are still found. When these nomads, they move from one place to other place, they sing the songs. Actually, they have to cross a long distance. Why? Because they have a huge livestock with them. They have this flock of sheep, goats, and other things, so they cannot carry them through the transportation. So they have to walk along, especially when they move towards the pastures and meadows for the grazing of these livestock. So they have to cross huge distances. To make it easier for them, they sing the songs. So that is what Imam Ahmad rahimahullah referred to, that he was asked about, that itinerant. So those nomads who are using these songs. So he said, it's not bad. It's not bad means, as long as there is no any content which is opposite to the Quran and Sunnah, contrary to the Quran and Sunnah, it's not. There's no harm in it. But if there is anything in it, like if any musical instrument is involved, then even the good speech is not allowed. Not to talk about the bad speech or the bad poetry. In that way, Aisha radiallahu anha report that two girls were chanting besides her the poems of Bu'as. Bu'as, actually, it was a long battle between the two tribes of Khazraj and Aus before Islam. They also come under this category. It's quite known that early Muslims did not have things such as mandolin, lute, and cymbals that agitate latent lusts in a way misleading ignorant persons due to their false joy and ecstasy. They do not claim that it's some sort of lawful amusement, but rather consider it some kind of spiritual attachment, calling it ecstasy. So the problem with the people is that they not only say that is lawful amusement, even they say is a way to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a spiritual journey to God. In fact, this practice is totally detached from that of early Muslims. We don't find that neither in the Sahaba, Tabi'in, Taba Tabi'in, Mujtahideen, Ulama, Fuqaha. We don't find any such example. Yes, to get the closeness of Allah, it was defined and it cannot be achieved except by showing our strict adherence to the commandments of Allah and of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. True ecstasy comes through reciting the Quran and contemplating over it. What's ecstasy? Elan, the inner upliftment. How can it be achieved? While avoiding the Quran and contemplation upon the Quran. It is when one's heart moves due to fear of punishment and longing for reward. When you recite the Quran, you come across with the words of Jannah. It will develop a desire, great desire of within us to achieve the Jannah. When we pass through the verses of the Jahannam, verses of the punishment, it will help us to stay away from the bad deeds. The scope of ecstasy is not so narrow that we would resort to singers. As I said before, while answering your question, that the concept of happiness is something different in Islam. It's a tranquility in the heart. It's not only through the music you can get this tranquility and this compositeness. There are many other ways. Best way is showing our true obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Truly, such songs may arouse ecstasy a little bit, but most of them instigate carnal lusts. As I said before, any society where you find the music is quite rampant, definitely you will see the adultery and fornication is quite rampant over there. If you want to see the outcome of this musical menace, you see a particular group or particular region where there is quite the music is quite prevalent and rampant. Definitely, you will find there the centers of this adultery are quite rampant. Therefore, desiring to derive therefrom benefit for the hereafter is similar to gazing at a beardless person to meditate over Allah's creation. That's known as technically amrad. Amrad is is a handsome boy who wears a lot of beauty and who is beardless means quite young. And a person is looking upon him And some scholars they forbid even the gazing at this type of boy who is quite young and wears lot of tremendous beauty. So he's quite handsome, and a person is gazing at him, and he says that I'm just contemplating upon the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Ghazali says that this is untrue, since his lust would preoccupy his thinking. He should rather follow the verse which reads, do they not look at the sky above them? This huge universe around us, isn't it enough for the process of contemplation? Isn't it enough to reflect upon, to ponder over, that a person finds this beautiful, tremendously beautiful young boy, and then he says, or even the young girl, a person looks at the young girl and says, I want to praise the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is just to deceive others, to befool others. And then Imam Al-Ghazali says, furthermore, presuming that it does not affect oneself or agitate his latent desires is a sheer pretense. He's telling a lie. He's not sincere in his speech, what he says. Rather, it always arouses the bad feelings in a person, not to talk about taking him close to God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is ruling about singing and music. If there is any question regarding this, we can ask, then we move forward, inshallah.
Yes, Sheikh, sorry. One question regarding this. In Malaysia, we always have, well, we used to, except last year because of the COVID. Every year we have the Quran reading competition. They call it Musabakah or Tilawah Al-Quran and international level. And people read the Quran, and they are supposed to read the Quran with singing, not singing, but with different tunes, different songs. They call it Taranum. So many versions of the Taranum. So it's therefore what they're doing is wrong. No. From what we learned today.
If they are using the musical instrument, then it is wrong.
No musical instrument, but singing. It's really, well, it's not singing as singing like Elvis singing, but there are many tunes to reading the Quran. They call, well, I don't know, but they call it Taranum, and there is different types lah. I can't remember the names, but there are. So this singing is tune. They use tune. I mean, no. Up and down and whatever.
Listen, for one thing, there is Taghanni bil Quran, reciting the Quran in a melodious voice. There are many ahadiths which encourage this. That's not Taghanni bil Quran and Tarannum. Now the scholars, who are expert in this particular field, they call it Tarannum. So Tarannum is allowed. There is no problem with the Tarannum, as long as it does not change the actual vowel sounds. That will change the meaning of the verse.
Oh.
As so long as
sorry, Sheikh. Taranum is not singing.
That's not singing. Singing is when you use the musical instruments. Then in Islamic context, how do we define singing? When you use the musical instruments, then it becomes singing.
But you can sing without musical instruments too.
What I'm saying that's why I said there's term sima and ghina. Ghina, when you say a particular poem, when you recite a particular poem, and then you also use the music, that is ghina, which is not allowed. Second is sima. Sima is that you recite a particular poem or verse of the Quran with a melodious tone, but you don't use any sort of musical instrument. That is allowed. There's no problem in it. That's why I said before, we need to make a difference between sima and ghina. And if you remember, I also added that even if it's a good song, the content is good, but music is played, it's not allowed.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem is not the way we recite it. The problem is the things which are added to it.
Yeah.
As music instruments. So if in Quranic competition, no musical instrument is involved, and they are using different intonations in order to beautify the recitation of the Quran, and even many of the hadiths, Prophet ﷺ, Zayyidul Quran bi aswatikum, that you embellish, you decorate the Quran, you refine the Quran by your sweet and melodious voices. So that is what technically known as tarannum. So there is no problem in the tarannum.
Okay, thank you. That's a relief. Thank you.
Okay. And second thing is, if even Quran is used and then musical instruments are used for recitation of the Quran, that's not allowed. Even if it is Quran, still it's not allowed, because the haram is musical instruments. So we should try our top level best to stay away from this.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Assalamualaikum, Sheikh.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I would like to ask two questions.
Yes.
One is nasheed, where nasheed, you know nasheed? They
Yes,
nasheed.
I know.
They use guitar for nasheed. Can they do this? Can they use this?
I said before that what Imam Al-Ghazali says, in the light of what we learned, no any musical instrument is allowed, except there's one hadith that is daf. I don't know in English, maybe you may help me. Daf is a one-sided drum.
Gendang.
Is a one-sided drum that is allowed. And even Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there's a hadith in, if I'm not mistaken, in Imam Al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah mentioned, Alinu nikah bid-dufuf. You spread the message of nikah by daf. So this one daf is allowed. The rest of the instruments, be it guitar, violin, or any other thing, it's not allowed in Islam.
Okay, another one.
We cannot say if a person is playing this and he becomes a disbeliever or kafir. No, we can say it is an act of disobedience. What Prophet ﷺ has forbidden should not be done. So it is. However, if a person denies its impermissibility, then there's a problem. So as long as a person plays it and he feels it is wrong, so it is hopefully inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive that person, because he knows the impermissibility and he acknowledges it is impermissibility. So as Muslims, we should try our top level best and encourage others not to play the music. Yes, your second question?
Sheikh, I don't have to continue with my second question because your first answer already answered me.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sheikh.
Welcome. Jazakallah khairah. Any other question?
Afwan.
Excuse me, Sheikh.
Yes.
Supposing that person has a very good talent in singing, and so she or he makes a living out of that, is that sinful?
Okay. I will give an example. After we finish our session, you Google, you go into the YouTube, you write down Junaid Jamshid. Junaid Jamshid was one of the famous singer in Pakistan. Not only in Pakistan, he went to many European countries, known for his singing, and he was quite like a rock star. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted him the guidance and hidayah, and became close to Allah, close to the Islam, and he left everything. Now, what about his living? What he did, he started the nasheed. Since he was already famous, he started the nasheed without the music. And he became even more famous by singing the nasheed. So there are many ways, and alhamdulillah, now in the Muslim world, there are Muslims who love these type of nasheed. I can say my weakness is also to listen to these nasheed without music, because this helps a person to feel in the closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they can use their talent to bring many people close to Allah. They can use this talent. As I give example of Junaid Jamshid. He left everything, and then he became very, very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you listen to his nasheed, it directly penetrates into the heart of a person. And I remember many young people, they turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by listening to his nasheed. So they can use their talent, they can use their skill to bring people close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just one thing they have to do, since they are skillful, Allah has given them this art. So they have to do one thing only, just avoid the music. And rest, they will see how Allah helps them, inshallah.
Thank you, Sheikh.
Welcome.